Welcome back to the garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is a continuation of a set of tour videos that we've been doing, showing in great detail the garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is Zone 7B, almost 8A. There's a playlist on the channel called New House if you want to go back and see how this project has developed over the last 3 years or so. This bed, or part of this bed in the front garden, what we're going to concentrate on in this video is this is south and that's east. Okay, so the sun comes up over top of the dogwood that you could see right behind me when the video started, and then sets on the other side of the house back there. In the winter, we get a lot of sun on this side, but there is this section of the garden is really dominated by this red maple that the neighbor has over here. There's roots all in here. We get shade from it, and we also have, it becomes dry, shaded conditions. I'll jump right in and show you a couple things that are interesting. This is the third of 4 boxwoods that I'm not talking about yet. These are 4 boxwoods that are going to be introduced in the fall, and I'll have some videos on them then. They're scientifically evaluated for blight resistance, and so it's a pretty exciting reintroduction of some boxwoods that we don't have to worry about boxwood blight on. So really looking forward to talking about those this coming fall. Down here by the rock, there's a blue star creeper. This is actually a white flowering form. This will just creep along, hopefully eliminate some of the mulching that we have to do. If you see any of the rocks in these in any of these tour videos and wonder kind of what their purpose is, we can drag a water hose around the edge of a lot of these and not decapitate the plants that are in the bed. I need to reposition a few of them because plants have kind of grown around them, but they are in strategic locations so that a water hose can be dragged by it without it just, literally decapitating everything else in the bed. Behind the rock, there is a Veronica, believe it or not. That is a ground cover Veronica. It was about this big when it went in, so it's actually put on a little bit of growth already this spring. This is an oriental Arborvitae called Franky boy. Needs to move. These two are really, really oddly positioned next to one another, but at the time it may have made sense. I don't know. But this kind of a wispy whipcord, like we have one called whipcord as well. It's a different type of conifer, but it's kind of like it. Really interesting. This is soft to the touch. Going to get some size on it. A lot of the conifers that we have in this garden are going to get some size on them over the years, and we'll choose what to do with them at that point. This one needs to move though pretty soon. Distylium up under the Shasta viburnum. I'll talk more about the Shasta viburnum later. That's cast in bronze. That's a Southern Living Plant Collection Distylium. All the new growth on it has kind of a bronze new coloration. Stays super compact. Took a little bit of damage back in that December freeze, but really did quite well overall. And I did a little light pruning on it the late winter, and it's flushed back out beautifully. Looks great right there. There's an Ajuga. We've got several Ajuga planted around the garden. This is a variegated one. They're all with the purpose in these shady areas of covering some ground. They would probably like it a little more moist than this bed. That maple is definitely stealing some of its thunder for sure. There's an Ardisia, and it came with the strawberry begonia in the same container. So Steph decided she would leave them together, and the strawberry begonia should just fill in some of this understory. That Ardisia will get some size to it, but not very tall. They're both ground covers, really. We'll see. We're just going to see what they do together. This Hellebore is called Sparkling Diamond. It has white double flowers on it. It's extremely long bloomed, great looking Hellebore, great foliage on it as well. This Hosta is called First Blush. It has red stems, and we've started to pick out some Hostas just for their stem color. We see lots of new Hosta coming with black stems, purple stems, red stems, all super interesting. This is the first year this one's been in here, so it's come up. It's maybe 2/3 the size it'll be next year once it gets another year up under it. There is a Solomon seal back here. We showed a Solomon seal in the last video. This one has a lot more color in it. This is one that I got, we got down at Ted Stevens, Nurseries Caroliniana. There are a lot of these beautiful Solomon seal. There are a lot of other varieties. I saw one recently that was almost entirely white on the inside of the plant, where the newer foliage was green and the old foliage was white. So I don't remember what the name of it is right now, but there are some very, very interesting Solomon seals other than just the plain variegated Solomon seal that gets sold to us at most garden centers. There's an Astilbe, first year in the ground, so it's going to take a bit for it to get some feet under it. Astilbe is another one that would probably like a little more moist conditions than what we have over here right now. And this is one of our favorite hostas. This one's Rainbow's End. It's about to flower now. Most of the hosta we have out here are starting to think about flowering or are flowering, and this one is just one of the more colorful ones. I like the size of it. It's actually spread quite a bit from what it was when we originally bought it. We tend to buy things in small containers and let them fill out. Next hosta is called Curly Fries, and you could definitely see why it's called Curly Fries. And it has kind of a chartreuse foliage as it's leafing out. It will green up during the rest of the summer. It won't be quite this bright by the end of summer, but that's fine. Looks fantastic. Again, another one that's about to start blooming. And it's hit the ground and looked good right out of the gate. Some of the other hosta in this dry area tend to take a little bit longer, but that one had no problem adapting. Unlike this Camellia japonica called Lemon Glow, I would say that Lemon Glow is definitely in my top 5 or so Camellia japonica varieties. It's a yellow, almost yellow, almost perfect double flower. These flower January, February. We don't have any flower buds on them yet. We'll get the flower buds on them during the late summer, and then it will flower again in the winter time. This one, we put it in the first winter. It had a little bit of damage, and then of course this tree over here has kept it a little bit dry. It's finally settled in, but something fell on it at some point, and I've got a cracked stem, this upper part. So this thing has just been through everything it can be gone through. At some point, it's going to start growing. The root system's growing, so at some point it's going to start to, take advantage of that larger root system and be able to grow much quicker. There's an elephant ear back in this area, another one that probably like a hair more water than it's getting, but it's doing okay. There's a Cleyera called Bigfoot. This is meant to complete a screen here of, up the street where we started this video. I'm trying to, have this front garden be pretty private as people are coming down the street. And this is part of that. It's grown quite a bit since we put it in the ground. Bigfoot's a perfect name for this one. It'll get as big as we want to let it get. It's just really growing it for the shiny green foliage. We've got some other Cleyera out here, a variegated one. We've got one with red new growth. We've got lots of different ones. This one is really just grown because it grows fast and it can make make things disappear quickly. A mix of a few shade things over here. There's a hosta that just went in here and the sun is cooking it a bit initially. New leaves will likely adjust to it. Shouldn't be enough sun to really hurt it, but it came out of a really shady space. Sometimes when you take something out of deep shade, even if you're putting it in only a minor amount of direct sun, it can still burn. This is a Rohdea. This was from a friend's garden. This was a division from a friend's garden. It's got a little Pachysandra mixed in with it. I'm not that excited about the Pachysandra, so I'll eventually get that out of it. But these have the red berries in the fall and winter. This is where they were last year. Just a great evergreen. This is like a hosta that stays evergreen and will take drier shade conditions than these hosta really like. So think about Rohdea. There's a lot of named varieties. It's another one we tend to have just a few of. Well, if you go shopping for them, but there's, my understanding, like 1,000 named cultivars or named varieties of Rohdea japonica. There's a big leaf hydrangea that we actually got from Dr. Durr, and it's gone in the ground recently. It's wilting right this minute, but it's raining it's been raining today, so it should come out of this wilt pretty quickly, but that's one we're gonna have to think about watering. This is a Catinus. This is royal purple smoke bush. It's not in as much sun as it would like, so it's leaning out over the street. It's probably about 15 feet tall. I pruned it down to about 3.5 feet winter before last, and it's grown 6 or 8 feet already. It has good color, but because it's not in enough sun, it's not flowering as much. Our neighbor's is in almost full sun on the other side of the tree, and it's in full bloom over there. This one, I think ultimately it probably needs to go. It's just never It's not that it's not pretty. It's just it's not located properly, and so we're not getting a lot out of it, really. There's an Abelia that was already here. This is a very large growing Abelia. It was pruned back very hard in a pruning video earlier in the spring. It's got a seedling from that maple coming up through the middle of it. I see that I need to get out of there. But it's already grown back about 3 feet. By midsummer, it'll be back to 6 feet tall, and it'll be in full bloom again. Out by the road on the other side of the Abelia and the smoke bush is a Jerusalem sage. This gets a lot of morning sun, and then it probably gets a little more afternoon shade than it would prefer, but it's doing well. I mean, it's got a lot of new growth on it. It's fine. Pye Weed directly behind it, and you'll see a much larger one a little further in this video. This is a Hellebore, a little different than the other Hellebores we've shown you in the other videos. This is the stinking Hellebore. They actually don't have any kind of bad smell at all. I don't know why. Honestly, they're called stinking Hellebores. Maybe they do at some point, but I've never been able to smell anything that I thought smelt off in any way. This one is a little fine textured Hellebore, very different than the other Hellebores we have in the garden with the broader leaves. It blooms for a long time. These flowers started back in January. Of course, they've been long finished at this point, but you know, the seeds are set and they're still kind of decorative up on the top of them. We bought this as a little 6-pack of plants, and they're about 2 feet tall. These are ones that can get away from you. All Hellebores can get a little bit seedy, but most of them are really slow to take space. These stinking Hellebores can actually take some space pretty quickly, so it's one we'll keep an eye on each year. We'll prune it back a bit and keep it just in that spot. Not a big deal. Easy to thin them out when we need to. There's about an 8-9 foot butterfly bush beside it, and it's one that's been here for a long time. It was here before we started this project with everything around it. We cut this thing down to about 2.5–3 feet tall just a few months ago in a video, and it's already, again, it's 8 feet tall out here. Steph's actually done some deadheading on it already. You can see where she'll deadhead them, and then we get the side branches and get additional flowers. This is a non-native, but it's a great pollinator plant for our native bees, butterflies. They were all over it all day. We just had a thunderstorm, just kind of run them out of here, but we'll deadhead it or even cut it in half in the middle of summer, and you know, it'll just bloom until fall. Next up is a Helianthus. This is a western sunflower. Normally blooms a little bit later in the summer. We've got a few things that bloom later typically that this year have decided to put on flowers very early in the summer. This thing is another one of those perennials that goes to sleep and wakes up 5 times bigger than when you planted it. So, be careful with this one. We'll rein this thing back in even before it goes to sleep this year, just to make sure that, it went to sleep. The footprint was about this big, and it woke up and the footprint was this big, and we decided just to go with it. It had some space, so we went with it. But if I let it happen again, it's just going to be everywhere. So we'll keep it under control from here. But that's a western sunflower. This is Verbena bonariensis. This is another. This is a non-native, and then we're about to go through a string of natives back here. But it's fantastic for our native pollinators, and our native goldfinches absolutely love the seed on Verbena bonariensis. This is one that can get a bit seedy too. I don't really have a problem with it. We'll pull a couple up here or there, but it's no big deal overall. Great plant. It's also one that doesn't get eaten by deer and rabbits. That's one nice thing about, the next one is a native, this Liatris spicata. This is a white flowering one. These do get eaten by the deer and the rabbits. Notice that this one is almost as tall as me. The other Liatris we've seen in the garden in the previous videos were half this height or even less. This area out here, we didn't put any compost in. We just stuck these things basically in the pure basic compacted clay soil out here, and they've actually liked it more than they did in the areas where we used a lot of compost and a lot of mulch. So, again, here's a coneflower, same thing. We've got coneflowers will be in the next video that are as tall as me over there, and the ones in the back garden, are this tall. So sometimes you can overthink it, do too much for the plants, and they actually end up underperforming. But stick some of these native pollinator plants just in your basic soil, water them in, and walk away. We have a dwarf ginkgo out here called Troll. It's actually put on quite a bit of growth already. It's not one that's going to be in a hurry. We'll remove some of these perennials from around it as we need to. A lot of the things we have out here, the shrubs, we'll give space to in time. A lot of these perennials and annuals are fillers in between them as we wait for them to put on some growth. Anemone here, fall blooming anemone. This is another one that can really take some space when it goes to sleep and wakes back up every year. It's gone through the fence on the other side. It's on its way. A couple of Asclepias here. These are great for the pollinators. You get the flowers, and then of course most of them are a host for some sort of butterfly larva. This is the powwow white coneflower. And we saw the one in the back garden is this tall with 2 little flowers on it, as opposed to this. Okay, and again, I'm just kind of pointing out that sometimes we overthink and over-amend our soils for these native pollinator plants, and you just don't have to. Unless you just had horrendous soils. Dig the hole, put them in, and look at this thing. Just look how great it looks. Another native pollinator plant out here. This is that Bee-Free bee balm. It is approximately 3.5 feet tall and very vigorous, very full. Has a little bit of powdery mildew down in the bottom of it, but really none up here on the foliage that stays a little drier. This thing just has big old fat bumblebee after big old fat bumblebee on it all day long. There's a clematis that's coming up over the top of it. This is, what is this, All Summer Love? Or Sweet Summer Love is this variety. We actually haven't seen it bloom yet. We've got several. We'll see one in bloom in the next video, whenever that one goes up. But this one, really, it just was a tiny little plant that was planted last year, didn't grow at all, and it's grown about 4 feet at this point. It's planted down here at the bottom of the post, and you give it something to climb on, and it takes off pretty quickly there. A pineapple lily called Sparkling Burgundy. This thing's really interesting because when it first comes up in the spring, it opens up during the day to capture the sunlight, and then it kind of folds up a bit during the evening. Something that I noticed this year. Once the flower spikes started to emerge on it, then it spread out, to let them do their thing. But it's quite a bit more purple when it initially comes up. That's faded some. It's a little more green than it was, but the flower spikes are also purple. They're just getting started. It's done this, gosh, these were way down in there maybe 2 days ago. In just a couple days, they've gained that much height. They'll come on up a little bit more. Just a great garden plant. Great texture. It's just, contrast with a lot of other things in the garden. There's a few Agapanthus in the back. There's Queen Mum, Everwhite. This is Indigo Frost with that little bit of purple in it. All of them have been hardy here. They were put to sleep pretty fast back in that December freeze on the 23rd, and just crushed them to the ground. And I wondered if that was me running out of luck on growing Agapanthus here in Zone 7. But they've come back and bloomed, coming back beautifully, and they're on their way to blooming. They'll bloom most of the summer. We have several zinnias, dwarf zinnias planted across the front. Most of these were done from seed. We do a lot of annuals from seed here. Go back and look at any of the seeding videos we have, and also the annual planting videos that we did a few weeks ago, if you want to know the names of all the annuals that you'll see in these various videos. There's a Cedrus atlantica right here. This one's called Sapphire Nymph. And these Cedrus atlantica, you can get all kinds of different shapes and sizes. Upright weeping ones, contorted ones, and then giant ones, and then this little dwarf one called Sapphire Nymph. Great color on this thing, really great color. We let the annuals get a little too close up under it last year and probably damaged it a bit, but we'll keep them trimmed back from it this year. This is a Caryopteris. This is a fall blooming shrub that is coming into bloom right here in the middle of June. Did the same thing last year, but we basically bloomed from the 1st of June or mid-June last year right through first frost in the fall. Great looking plant. I grew this one for years at my nursery. It's just such a great compact Caryopteris. I cut this down to probably 14, 15 inches during the winter time. It blooms on new growth, so all the new growth coming out from that pruning is very full, dense, compact, and it will just bloom and bloom and bloom. Pollinators absolutely love it. Deer won't eat it, rabbits don't eat it. Kind of perfect plant in that regard. This is Golden Jubilee Agastache. There was one in the maybe third or fourth video in this series of videos. Gold foliage, great lavender flowers that contrast against that. This one's a little bit hidden, doesn't have quite as much sun as it would like, so therefore it's not as gold as the one is in the back garden, but it is quite vigorous. And again, it's another just fantastic pollinator plant. It's also one the rabbits just don't bother with. They don't go near that one. It's got a really very, very strong smelling foliage on any of these. And this is one, we said a few times now that some of these are just not all that hardy. This one though, we're batting 1,000 with it. It is just a fantastic variety, very reliable, coming back year to year, and you can see how floriferous it is, how many flowers are on it. After it slows down, we can just cut this thing in half. It'll come right back out from that and it'll start blooming again. We've reached the end of the flowers on the Empress of China dogwood. It's been blooming for 2 months. Probably the anticipation of flowering even longer than that. It had thousands and thousands of flowers on it. A lot of them are down on the ground now, but here we are in the middle of June, and it's bloomed, really since April. They started to show up on it. The spent, where the bracts are falling off, this fruit will actually turn red in time, and they're actually edible from what I understand, but the fruit's very decorative as well. This is an evergreen dogwood, although back in December, on the 23rd of December, it dropped some leaves from that rapid cold, but generally speaking, it holds its leaves through the winter time. Here's a salvia called Caradonna. This is a good one. This was up at Jay Sifford's beautiful garden up in West Jefferson. He had a big group of this that was in full bloom during the time we were up there. These salvia, we can prune. We can prune them in half as they slow down like this one's doing. And we'll get a few residual flowers from it, not a whole lot. But it's great to have these early flowering salvias out here blended in with the ones that bloom in the summer and bloom right into the fall. Some of the sages and things bloom into the fall. So we kind of have all those covered, all those seasons of these salvias covered for the pollinators. In this container is golden Oakland holly. We had one in the back garden in one of the previous videos. It's about 8 feet tall in the ground. You can see its upright, narrow habit. Just a really great plant. Easy pop of color in the garden. It's self-fruiting, so it'll get the red berries on it. It'll flower in the spring, get the red berries on it going into the fall season. There's a spirea down here at my feet called Little Bonnie. It was in full bloom maybe 3-4 weeks ago at this point. It has finished up now. I'll probably go in here and shape it up just a little bit in the next few weeks. This is a Southern Living Plant Collection one. Very long bloomed, great little compact habit to it. Great plant. Epimedium down here, and I showed this off in one of the previous tour videos. The bees will come along. There's a few ground-dwelling bees that will come along and cut these edges off of here. They line their little nest with them. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Plant's not being harmed in any way. It's kind of interesting that those bees do that. Another Hellebore, lots of Hellebores in this garden. A lot of newer, improved varieties, and then a few that are, just kind of old-fashioned standbys. All of these were cut back in January pretty hard. All the foliage was taken off. The flowers came up and flowered, and then new foliage has replaced them. Again, just incredibly drought-tolerant plants. I'm going to pop back into here. There's a Camellia right here called Crimson and Clover. This is all three of these actually are Bobby Green's great camellias. We've got October Magic Ruby in the back garden, October Magic Orchid, and then these three right here, fantastic plants. This one's called Crimson and Clover, Camellia sasanqua, blooms early, like really early, September, late August even. It may have had a flower last year. As soon as we get a few cool nights, the flowers are like red early on, and as the nights got cooler in the fall, the buds that continued to open later became more and more burgundy color, a really rich burgundy color. It's really kind of interesting. I think that's why he called it crimson and clover. Really, really interesting. Joe Pye Weed next to me, that is, I would say 9.5 feet tall at this point. It will continue to grow. Although it's about to bloom, it's a little early for it as well, probably to start throwing out some color, but it's about to. Starting to rain on us here. Last 3 plants though for this, this bed. We have a light pink shishi, Gashera, Camellia, and this is white shishi. Both of these have double flowers, really just fantastic, super compact Camellia sasanquas. And then this is a Shasta viburnum, which we limbed up in a video earlier this season. I think it looks really, really great. It did not bloom as well for us this year. I had pruned it hard the year before that. Keep in mind that pruning on these Shasta viburnum is not really recommended. It works, just let them grow, put them in a place where they can get big. I've limbed this one up so I can let it get bigger on the top. I didn't have to prune it. So it'll bloom a lot heavier next year, and it'll also get kind of a red fruit on it after it flowers. So there you go. There's the front garden bed that faces kind of south and east here in our Raleigh, North Carolina garden. I think there's like one more video to go in this series. Thanks for watching.